Welcome to NYLA 2020 On Demand. This session was previously recorded for the NYLA 2020 virtual conference. It is available to you through December 31st, 2020. Please note, once viewed, each on-demand program is eligible for 1 continuing education credit. Links to materials and presenter contact information have been archived in a Google folder. The link to the folder can be found at the end of this recording. Any questions about the NYLA 2020 virtual conference digital platform can be directed to Christina at nyla.org. Or you can call 800-252-6952. Teen eSports in Your Library is sponsored by PCRT and co-sponsored by Sizzle and YSS. Today's speakers are Luke Schrodine, Chris Fazio, and Alexander Kiladitis. So without further ado, let's bring our speakers on.
Chris, I think you're muted.
Oh, we just got unmuted.
Okay, great.
We're good to go. Hello, welcome to Teens Esports in Your Library. Let's just take a moment to introduce ourselves very quickly. My name is Chris Fazio. I'm a high school English teacher and a co-advisor of the Video Game Club. And my favorite video game is Final Fantasy Tactics.
Hello, everybody. I am Alexander Kiladitis. I am the current president of Queens Metropolitan High School's Video Game Club, and one of my favorite video games is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate for the Nintendo Switch.
Hi, I'm Luke Schrodine. I am one of the co-advisors of the Video Game Club at Queens Metropolitan High School, and my current favorite game is still Portal. What we just did was an activity that we do at the beginning of Video Game Club during every year to try to show our passions for our own video games and try to get students to really share out about what they like. Let's see, we also asked them to introduce themselves briefly, and it starts off the process that we're going to be talking about today of getting students to feel comfortable and feel a sense of community. Now let's talk about the history of the Video Game Club at Queens Metropolitan High School.
So very briefly, we began as the Computer Game Club. I started it in 2013 to explore different genres of computer games, to tie in with programming, and eventually with the goal of making games. So every student would create their own, their own code. This proved to be very difficult, and a lot of it ended up being more like a lecture of me going through the history of different genres and sharing examples of classic games. But it was more of an exercise in my own interests. So it evolved.
Once students started hearing about the Computer Game Club and asking, wait, do you play video games there? Then the club really took off. We changed the theme a little bit to have students actually playing video games, and membership ballooned from there. Kids came, and I think at that point, and also still now, we're the most attended after-school club in Queens Metropolitan High School. The objective shifted from making video games to playing video games, so fun really became the goal, and we wanted to really allow the students to sort of dictate where the club went and then follow their lead.
That led to the creation of the executive board. A lot of organizations and schools have leadership, but this was originally just a fun space to play video games. So what's the point of that? We wanted to think outside the club and have students be a part of the school community as well, and see themselves as integrated into the school and have ownership over the club. So we appointed a few positions and had our first election in 2017. And then from that point on, almost all the decision-making process rested in the hands of students.
And that was a nice touch, because once the students really took the reins of the club and started making those decisions, we were able to sort of make sure that we thought really around the club and made sure that we were hitting the main ideas, which was to foster community and to make sure that the students had that space to play in. The nice thing about having the kids really take charge and take initiative was that we were able to come sit back and say, okay, now what can we do to make sure that this runs effectively and smoothly?
And that brings us to today, yeah, where we have these 3 big goals for Video Game Club. Just the engagement goal, which has been there from day one, getting kids interested and having fun, you know. But then these other goals ended up developing through the years. We noticed that kids were, you know, developing strong relationships and were using the club as a means to get to know people and to, you know, develop themselves. And finally, to build community within the club and also the school at large.
Yeah, and I really want to speak to this engagement piece at first. So when you look at a student's notebook, when you look at the margins while you're trying to give a lecture, you really see what they're thinking about when they're supposed to be thinking about geometry or English. And what you see is stuff about video games. They're so enthusiastic about what they like, and they really want to share those passions with each other and with you. Especially if they think you're cool enough to understand it. So as teachers, we really look for that engagement. And as Chris mentioned before, when we moved from Computer Gaming Club to Video Gaming Club, that we looked to try to capture that engagement and try to get students to really buy into the club. And you can see here a couple of different examples of student-made art that was inspired by and sometimes created in Video Game Club.
So yeah, we were really able to funnel that creativity into all sorts of different areas. Specifically here, you see a lot of our fundraisers. We've had, you know, perler bead creations. We've done bake sales. And when the kids are having fun, they really want to become more involved. Even with something as, you know, that seems as introverted as playing video games, people can really open up when you unlock that creativity. And this engagement it's more than just kids having fun. It's actually what led us to, I don't know, the correct path for the club. We didn't come from the top down and say, Video Game Club is going to be about, you know, being artistic or being creative. Like, that's not our position. What we did was kind of react to where the kids' interest led and built off of that, as you'll see in the next few slides.
As a personal note, it was so remarkable to see the kids working on these little art projects. You know, we had a bake sale at the school, as my colleague talked about, and instead of having the kids bake, you know, muffins or cookies at home, they decided, well, let's make something that we can, you know, really share our passion. So they actually sold fairly well. We were able to take that engagement and really capture it in the spirit of competition. Now, you can see a couple of pictures here. Some of the pictures are in Video Game Club. You can see the picture on the top left is students just playing together. On the bottom left, we asked the students to play in classic console challenges, which were games that are more, I guess, from myself and Mr. Fazio's era. And then also you can see the competitions got so large they ended up being in the auditorium. So much different than sitting next to your friend in a darkened room playing video games. That spirit of friendly competition really brought students together and made them try to improve. And that was a nice thing to see. Like, I don't want to be at this level, I want to get better. And as a teacher, you always want to see that. And in this last picture, you can see that some of the adults in the building and the students are all getting together to play video games at the same time.
That brings us to relationships. So as I mentioned earlier, it's natural for kids to bond over a shared experience and shared values. And Video Game Club is a place where, you know, people are all there for the same reason, you know, to have fun. You can see this is me with a lot less hair, playing some Star Wars with some of our club members. And it's a really nice, friendly environment, but that's not an accident. It does take effort to, mold the values of the club. We introduced the Queens Metro Code of Conduct through the executive board, just to remind people, because if you've seen teenagers play video games, they get really excited, and that competition is a double-edged sword, because of the peaks and valleys of competition. So we want people to know that as excited as you get, people are yelling, but that doesn't mean that we're not civil. And you hear it after every exciting match. You hear, "Oh, GG," that's good game, in gamer speak. And we kind of, that summarizes our philosophy pretty well. That no matter how heated it gets, you can always say GG.
Yes, sometimes people will come in from the hallway and ask what the ruckus is about, and it'll really be very loud, but it'll really be very constructive.
Right.
And truthfully, when you think about it, being a high schooler is difficult, especially when you come to the high school level. You're a ninth grader, you don't know any of the other people around you, and it's maybe hard for you to make friends. But when you come into Video Game Club, we wanted to show the students that they all have a level playing field, and they all have that same goal from our shared code of conduct, which is to have fun.
So we've mentioned that Video Game Club creates a community within Room 3005, but also within Queens Metropolitan High School itself. We have very strong sports programs at Queens Metro. They form the backbone of our culture, tremendous volleyball teams. But Video Game Club is an equal alternative to that. People come out to these big tournaments that Alex will be talking about in just a little bit. It's a traditional alternative to traditional team sports. The excitement level is there. People are talking this up for weeks in advance. And that's not to say that the weekly club meetings aren't great too, but it really creates a special energy that we see as potentially great for libraries as well, that people can get excited about and share with each other.
Yeah, and when we started giving the power over to, or the reins, I should say, over to the executive board, they would come to us and they would say, listen, the kids in the hallway are stopping me to ask me when's the next tournament. So that's the sort of thing where they feel comfortable coming up to each other and really having that community to say, this is something that we want. Speaking of community, when you walk into the building in Queens Metropolitan High School, there are several murals around, and some of the murals that lead up to the room that we hold Video Game Club in were inspired by video games. The students by themselves asked, what can we put up here in the hallway to sort of show what we like and what our interests are, and give people a sense of what they're in for when they come here. So this is just one of the, I think it's now 3 video game themed murals in that particular stairwell. They are really trying to make their mark and show this is a place where they belong. These are familiar sites. These are familiar sprites, possibly copyrighted, but they're something that people see and they get excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, this to me, just like looking at this from an outsider perspective, it seems like kids from the 80s. Having children and forcing their culture on people, but these are all student generated things, and this is like, it just speaks to how powerful video game culture is, that it kind of transcends generations, and kids are just as excited about these things now as we were.
It's true. We previously talked about the ownership piece, and having that sense of community does sort of get a little disorganized. That's why that executive board was put in there in the first place. We wanted the students to feel like they were able to go to somebody that represents them in the student body that says, we're going to organize these things. So you can see on the bottom left the different e-board positions. We have specialized positions for our club that really meet our needs as far as who's going to organize the tournaments, who's going to make sure that all of the batteries are charged and ready, who's going to be in charge of putting up those posters. You saw a poster previously on the presentation. All of these things we'd like to be student generated, and that way it's more authentic. It's coming from a place where it feels familiar. You can also see on the screen here the crowdsourced shirts poll, and I'll let Mr. Fazio speak about that.
Yeah, so we try our best to get input from the whole club, and in this digital age, we can use Google Forms and any number of online tools to do that. So Alex will talk a little bit more about that when he talks about organizing for tournaments. But it's really important to get input from the students themselves. And this just continues to echo the theme of letting student interest guide your program instead of dictating it yourself. It did take a long time, just from the very beginning of I'm interested in this topic, I'm going to talk about it with kids, to everyone's just playing Smash Brothers. Is it okay that they're just playing Smash Brothers? Shouldn't we have them play different games? It's okay. Let them figure out what they want and how to lead the club.
Yeah, it's much better than a top-down perspective for sure. And we wanted to give you a sense of how the mural came together. And from the first time I saw it while coming down those stairs trying to leave the building, I saw just a bunch of scribbles on the side of the staircase. But as it came together, I saw more and more students contributing, and students that sometimes didn't even come to the video game club. They decided to lend their artistic talents, and you can see our art teacher here, Miss Russell, participating in that. And it came along quite nicely, and sometimes it would stagnate for a little while. It would take weeks for the next layer to be put on, but once it came together in its more finalized form, you really get a sense of the fact that the kids want everyone to know who goes here.
Yeah, and so as with Video Game Club, it takes a long time, takes a lot of effort, but it is this group of people who make it happen. And I really like this picture from our yearbook last year, kind of showing how proud we are of the group and just the excitement that comes with a student-led organization, which I think is a pretty okay segue to our leader, Alex, who's going to talk a little bit about the specifics on how to run a tournament, how we've done our tournaments, and how that might be a good fit for libraries.
Hello, everybody. Just to reintroduce myself, I am Alexander Kiladitis, and I am the current president of the Video Game Club. For my section here, I am really going to be focusing on the tournaments that we run in Video Game Club, which are a major part of both how we run the club and just the culture surrounding the club. So the first thing that we do whenever we decide that we want to have a tournament, and we decide we want to have a tournament when the tournament director, which is one of the executive board decisions, comes to us and says, hey, I think it's about time we have a tournament. We usually have about 1 or 2, sometimes 3, but that's more on the rare side per year. So the first step in creating a tournament is asking the community, which Mr. Fazio and Schrodine really emphasize that community when talking in their section, and that reflects itself in how we do things. So we get an idea of what games everyone in the club likes, and then we create a Google form, send it out to them, and let the community decide what we will do from there. After that, this is the toughest step on the tournament organizer. The tournament organizer has to do the research on how to hold a tournament for this game. That includes things such as what rules should you have for the game. You can look at the Street Fighter rules we had when we did our tournament. Everything in the game needs to be planned out. What's allowed, what's not allowed, what's in that gray area and how much you can limit that. Then you also need to know the logistical side of it, which is how many people can we have playing this game? How many people can we have at each station so that they're not being too disruptive? And what do we need in order to have this tournament? Do we have the systems? Do we have the games? Do we have the controllers? And so on and so forth.
Yeah, just to butt in for a second, before Alex was president, he was the tournament director, and had ample experience with this. And it's not easy. Like if you think you're just going to put a bunch of consoles in front of kids and say, all right, it's tournament time, figure it out. it will not work.
Yeah.
Modern games have so many settings. You can have all these different characters, but some are broken, so they're unfair to play with. And yeah, the research is super important.
Yeah, just to continue to touch on that, when I had to plan out one of my tournaments, it was for one of our Super Smash Brothers tournaments. That took me and Mr. Fazio, Mr. Schrodine, about a week of research and deliberation before we finally settled on a concrete rule set. So this can take a while.
Truth be told, I wasn't much help. These games are a little bit too advanced for me.
All right. Then you finally get up to running the tournament. And it's a big, exciting event. Spirits are high, but you still need some sort of management during that. So what we did was we had the advisors, Mr. Fazio and Mr. Schrodine, and any available executive board members monitoring the stations just to make sure that nothing too unsportsmanlike or disruptive was going on. And at the end of each match, we had the players go up to one of these people and report their scores so that we could enter them into the bracket and make sure that the tournament went along smoothly. After we had our grand finals match and those results were reported, we would have everybody gather around. We would put up the results on either the whiteboard or the smart board. And after announcing who got what place, we would distribute the prizes. The prizes usually weren't anything too big. The main prize is just the fact that you can go up to your friend and say, hey, I won this tournament. But we usually did have something to congratulate the people who got first, second, and third. Mr. Fazio or Schrodine, would you like to touch upon the prizes a little bit?
Yeah, so it's funny because like the competition we mentioned is an important part of Video Game Club, but it's not. You mentioned, Alex, the pride is even bigger. Like we'll have kids who win, who place in the tournaments, and they just don't come up to pick up their prizes for 3 weeks because that wasn't really the point, And so that's why we call it healthy competition. On a technical note, if you're trying to do this in a library and you're kind of struggling through the sea of tournament speak, what you see on the screen is a bracket from challenge.com. It's the word challenge, but with an O. And it's a free tool where you can set up single or double elimination brackets. If you have the time, we recommend double elimination just to allow people to play a little longer.
And just to echo what Mr. Fazio said, speaking of the prizes, yeah, sometimes I had the prizes in my drawer for 2 to 3 weeks, but every time Video Game Club came time, everyone would want to play the person who won. Everyone would want to try to, get a sense of their style and everything like that and learn from them. So it really didn't stop at the tournament. The feeling, the buzz, the excitement continued after that.
Whenever we ran these tournaments, there were a number of benefits, but most of them weren't monetary. We usually didn't make too much from these tournaments. The main thing we got out of it was student interest. We would have people come in either to watch or participate in these tournaments who had shown up to Video Game Club once or twice, or maybe even not at all. And afterwards, I would recognize a few of them becoming regulars in the club. But the draw-in that we got wasn't even the most important part. It was how it impacted the community that was already existing within the club. Whenever we announced that we were going to have a tournament, the club would explode, for lack of a better word. The tournaments are really a pillar of our community, and if we didn't have them, Video Game Club would be unrecognizable. The tournament has 3 phases: before it, during it, and afterwards. Leading up to the tournament, everyone in the club is super excited because most of them want to participate. You will see a big rush of people who maybe aren't so practiced in the game and want to get better, or have no idea what to do in the game but want to participate, going up to people who have a much better understanding of it and asking them, hey, how do I do this? Can you teach me how to do this? Or, hey, can you just give me a quick rundown of how to play the game? And 9 times out of 10, And in the one case where it doesn't happen, it's usually just because the person doesn't have the time or is too busy helping other people. The club members will come together and sometimes organize entire groups to teach people how to play the game, just so that we can get as many people in this tournament as we want. During the tournament, the excitement doesn't fade. You have all of these matches going on. You have people coming with their friends to cheer on other people. You have people talking about the matches after they happen. You have big crowds forming around certain matches, and it gets very loud, like Mr. Fazio and Mr. Schrodine mentioned before. In fact, it gets even louder during tournaments, because when you're playing for the stakes, everybody wants in on it. Like, I remember one match in particular. There's two kids who have graduated now, but they even participated in games outside of our school, so they were very practiced. When they ended up getting matched against one another, anybody who wasn't playing a game already formed around them, and when the winner finally got their decisive hit in, everybody jumped, everybody screamed. It was a big event, and it just felt good to be a part of that group. After the tournament, it calms down a little bit, but not entirely, because you have people coming up to the people who placed highly in the tournament and congratulating them, or wanting to have a game with them just so that they can see how they can improve, or just for the right to play them. You have people who don't even go to the club coming up to you in the hallway and saying, "Oh, hey, I heard that you did really well in this tournament, nice job," or, "Oh, I didn't know that you were really good at this game." And so it really helps bring the club together, because it's this unifying experience throughout that everybody can be a part of, and gives us all something to look forward to in the club, aside from just coming to see our friends and meet new people every week.
Yeah, I just want to go back to that moment he mentioned with the two alumni playing each other, and Alex mentioned, yeah, they play this game outside of the club as well, and he's referring to, like, real world competitions, like paid tournaments, and we may not all realize it, but this video game culture has expanded so much in the past 10, 15 years that esports are now like a profitable, huge industry. And this is not just like kids sitting around playing video games. It's a lifestyle choice, right? And so you're tapping into one of the biggest, most exciting things in teen culture when you're inviting kids to play in competitive tournaments. And so, yeah, like esports, esports stars kind of have the same cachet as YouTube stars in some circles. They live in houses together and have their own Instagrams and have their own lifestyles. So this kind of gives kids a safe entree into this world.
All right, now why you're here, how we can implement these into the library. But we wanted to give you a few reasons why we feel it would be a good idea to put video game clubs in the libraries before we get into the details. First, technology is everywhere. Kids who are born today and the past couple of years are surrounded by technology. They will be playing video games or be on computers from the earliest moment possible. And by having this technology and video games be such a big part of your library, that can be a way to draw them in. Second, video games aren't really a single player thing anymore. There are still a lot, but nowadays they're becoming more and more of a group activity, whether that be online or in person. And you can really capitalize on that to build the same sense of community that we have in our school into your libraries, where you'll have people showing up for the club and become a regular at the library. And what's really important, if you're trying to attract kids with this video game club, it helps them develop their social skills, because like Mr. Fazio and Mr. Schrodine were saying, when you're just joining high school not even just high school, middle school or something, you don't really know too many people usually. And so it can be difficult to find your place. But by having this club, this place to belong, you can develop your social skills. You can meet people. You can get better at talking with them, because if you're sitting down and playing video games with someone, 9 times out of 10, you're going to turn to them and say, hey, good game or something. That usually spirals off into different conversation where you get to know them a little bit better. So for these reasons, we really think that if libraries were to work on implementing video game clubs, the rewards would be great.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
I think of some of the groups that we've had in the past, I can think of so many students that have developed their own circles of friends that they end up going to college with together. They end up, counting these people among their closest friends. I can remember specifically one student who celebrated his birthday at Video Game Club. This was early on in Video Game Club's history, and he enjoyed it so much because all of the people there, he didn't really have a birthday celebration outside of Video Game Club. He just had it there, and he enjoyed it so much that it became sort of a staple. And he reminded us every year, remember, like, we're gonna celebrate my birthday this year. And it really brought him so much joy to be with his friends that he made just through video games.
Yeah, I can really speak to that friendship part of it, because I was one of those students that Mr. Fazio and Mr. Schrodine were talking about, where when I entered high school, I didn't really know anybody. But on my first day in video game club, when I was just walking around, I bumped into this one kid, and he told me, hey, we're having a mini Injustice tournament. Would you like to play with us? And I still talk to him to this day. So the connections you make while playing these video games are substantial.
Yeah, I just wanted to leave off with one note about the idea of libraries and video games not being a contradiction. I know that it seems like this is a huge, we keep lauding video games as this great thing for kids. It's like, well, are they actually going to read though? I mean, I'm an English teacher, Mr. Schrodin's an avid reader, and Alex is, one of the top students in our school. Like they're not incompatible is what I'm trying to say. You get people coming into video game club, sometimes not even to play video games, just to like hang out with their friends. A lot of people read a lot of manga in video game club, and it's kind of a common area. And so again, not to belabor this point, but you have to like watch what the kids do and see where their interest lies, and then build around that. And so I think that there is a space for video games in the library, but also for reading in video games.
Now, here are the ideas we had for how you can implement the video game club into the library. Obviously, it's not going to be exactly like the one we have at Queens Metro, because we're in a school environment, you're in a library environment, but we have a few things that we think would really help. So the first thing you should do, in our opinion, is to form some sort of advisory board, some group of people that can manage the rules and can bring in the consoles and games, so that you can actually have the video game club. You can have the people playing video games. Next, you want to set a schedule for this club. You have to decide what fits your library best. So whether it's weekly like we have in Queens Metro, or bi-weekly, or just whenever you get the chance, you need to decide that before you really set off with the club. Next, you want some way to promote this club. You need to advertise it to people who might be interested, and using social media to do so is the best way to reach kids who might be interested in playing video games. So if you just go out and you post, hey, our library is going to have a video game club this week at this date and time, stop by if you're interested, I'm willing to bet that that more people will see that than if you just sent out a flyer or something. Next, libraries and schools work together on a lot of things. So if you were to use that connection with the school to advertise your club, that might draw in people. Even if it's just something as simple as having them announce, hey, the local library is having this cool after school event. If you want to go, you might get some people, because we have an announcement for Video Game Club, and that's one way that we spread information about when our club is and what we do. In my opinion, the most important step is talk with your community. You have to be interacting with them constantly, because the video game world and the people who play it are constantly evolving. So you need to grow and adapt with the community. If you see that this game is becoming really popular, or a lot of people are talking about this thing, talk to them about it, see how you can implement it into the club, see how many more people you can get by making that a big part of your club. And if that thing suddenly becomes not so popular, you have to be willing to change and implement what the people want now. And finally, familiarize yourself with the gaming industry. Just look up blogs about gaming, look at conferences or other sorts of publications. Just be familiar with what's going on in the gaming sphere of the world. Because if you see this big new game is coming out that a lot of people can play, it might be a good idea to look into it more and see if you could implement that into your libraries as well.
This last step is a little bit more geared towards the students. So if they are able to tell you, if your advisory board is able to tell you what's new and interesting in video games, use them as a resource to try to figure out what they're reading, so you can piggyback on that.
All right. And that is all we have. So now we will open the floor to questions.
We do have a couple questions. The first one is, I see a lot of boys in the photos of the members, which, hey, good. It's important to provide spaces for boys to socialize around common interests. I'd like to know what the female interest is and how you're helping to make sure the space is welcoming and safe to girls who game as well.
Should I start with that one?
Sure.
All right. It's true we don't have a lot of girls coming into our club, but it's not like we go out of our way to stop them. In fact, this year we had more girls than in the past couple of years I've been a part of Video Game Club. And from my experience, they have been treated exactly the same as everyone else in Video Game Club, because gaming is becoming more and more of a universal and unisex pastime, where it doesn't really matter too much what the sex of the person playing the games are. It's more important to everyone in the club that you are respectful and you are just there to have a good time and play games.
Yeah, this is something that we need to get a lot better at, to be frank, in Video Game Club, because we are welcoming, but we're not actually doing more to reach out and to invite young women into the club. And oftentimes you see girls come in who are interested and then just aren't ready to engage. And so what we've done is we've encouraged the e-board to enforce that code of conduct, which includes being inviting and just like asking people, hey, do you want to play with us? Because, while it's nice that the club is this kind of safe space where people can hang out, it can be daunting if you come in for the first time, you're a young woman and you see 7 guys crowded around a Wii, and then, I don't know if I want to engage in that. And so I think that a lot of our members, Alex included, have done a great job of being really open and welcoming, and just saying, hey, are you playing anything right now? Do you want to come try this out? And we try to do that as well with the classic console challenges being an option that is a level playing field where no one's played this game before. So yeah, of course, let's try this together, and that's often a good entry point for people who are new to the club.
Yeah, and we have a female member of Video Game Club who is on the e-board. So it's not an exclusionary place. It's a place for all. And as Mr. Fazio said, we just have to get better at making sure that everybody knows it's a place for everybody.
Great. Is there a plan or a way to continue the club and tournaments through the virtual hybrid schooling this fall? I'm sure that's been on everyone's mind.
I can take that and say that we're not quite sure. We definitely want to make sure that students still have the ability and the space to be in that community. And we started that last year by trying to make sure that students were able to access a Discord server. There was a lot of back and forth between our administration about what was, what was possible and what was not possible. But as of right now, students are very savvy about talking to each other online, so they're able to do that. And there is a focus on trying to make sure that those extracurricular activities, especially video game club, are still there. So we don't have an implementation plan yet, but it's definitely something that's forefront.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Discord is an online chat, voice and text chat program that people use primarily for playing video games. That was actually Alex's brainchild. So I don't know, Alex, if you want to speak to that a little bit.
Sure, I'll take it. Yeah. This idea is inspired because one of my friends who goes to Bronx Science and goes to their video game club, they had their Discord, and I saw the benefits of that, and I wanted to try and implement that into our club. Unfortunately, we didn't quite get it all ironed out before the world got turned upside down in March, but so I fully believe that using something like Discord or any good alternative to get that community into the virtual space so that it can prosper both in school and out of school would be a great idea. You just have to be willing to tinker with whatever you stick with.
Yeah, modern video games all have online multiplayer. It's totally possible to run these things online. Challenge is an online tool, so it's definitely within the realm of possibility.
And in previous years, we've had tournaments that not everybody was able to attend. So we looked into trying to broadcast them online on Twitch, which is a video sharing site that a lot of video gamers use. So these are all options that we have, and things that you can certainly look into for your libraries as well.
Great. For the staff advisors, my library has a history of reflexively saying no instead of yes. What was your biggest red tape issue running the club, and how did you address it?
It's funny, a lot of the red tape is stuff that we put up ourselves. We reacted very strongly to kids bringing in realistically violent games. So we immediately just put a ban on M-rated games. This is the first thing I could think of red tape. Our administration's been very, very generous with us. I don't know, Mr. Schrodine, if maybe you think that tournaments has been difficult.
I mean, as you said, it's all us. We got asked almost every week, can we play games in which there are online interactions? And if they're not rated by ERSB, by the regulating body that says whether the game is an M-rated game or whatever, if they're not rated, if you can't prevent students from being exposed to other people, then we just put the kibosh on it. So yeah, I'm having trouble thinking of a situation in which we've suggested something for the video game club. Even using the auditorium after school for a tournament, we've only gotten yes, because they know, the administration knows how popular the club is and how much it's valuable to keep students in the building. So yeah, I can't really think of that many other examples.
This may be helpful for you just to recognize that some of these things will be obstacles. So for example, these online interactions, we paint a very bright picture of video games in our community because we've, fostered that community intentionally. But I played a lot of video games online in my day with incredibly toxic communities and terrible people. And it's like, I don't want to, cherry coat this too much, because like it's dangerous to just go out onto a random public server and play a game of League of Legends, for example. So like, if you do want to do these things online, for example, that's one piece of red tape you're going to want to get through. Like, how can I ensure that our interactions are just with our members and that people are accountable for what they say and what they do online, and that it is a kind of closed sphere. I think that may be like the first red flag your organization will put up.
And truthfully, the students, as Alex spoke to, the students are going to be guiding you in that as well. Like a student that wants to spend their time and to help you and advise you on this club is going to generally know, I don't do this, I don't go into this server, or I don't play this game or whatever because of the community that it represents, and that's not us. So allow them to guide you in that.
Great. And our final question is it possible to do a successful and engaging tournament with just one setup or device?
It might take a while, but if you plan your rules around that, then I believe you could. Generally in Video Game Club, because we usually have enough systems, whether we have them in the club or we know we can count on some people to bring them in, we can plan our rules around the fact that we will have 3 or 4 different systems going at a time. But if I had to plan around one, then I would definitely have much stricter time limits on the matches and so on and so forth.
Yeah, there are definitely games that you can play that allow for more players at the same time. You could theoretically have 16 people play a single match of Smash Brothers, for example. And maybe that's too extreme because it seems like high variance. Like, how am I going to win out of 16 people? It seems kind of crazy. And you shrink it down to maybe 4 or 5, and then suddenly it does seem like a fair test of skill. We have a lot of tryhards in our video game club, and we say, oh no, it has to be one-on-one, and that's the only way to do it. But it's totally possible to have games where you have more players than that, which allow you to iterate your rounds faster and faster.
And yeah, that limiting factor that having one system is very difficult. I mean, I don't have any of the modern systems, and I don't think Mr. Fazio does either. But the nice thing about having the students involved is that, as Alex just pointed out, they're going to bring in their own system. So allowing them to sort of share those systems with you is going to help. But yeah, as was said, it just depends on the game, and it depends on the amount of time that's being used per game.
Great. Thank you so much to Alexander, Chris, and Luke. This concludes the NYLA 2020 on-demand program, Teen Esports at Andrew Library. We hope you continue to take advantage of all the on-demand and live programs the NYLA 2020 annual virtual conference has to offer. Thank you for helping us make this the best virtual conference ever.